Speaking of light, there are many ways different groups and different people bring light to our congregation. One is the Sisterhood, who sponsors our pre-nag most weeks, especially when we don't have a B'nai Mitzvah family. But also, special this week, Torah study usually is here at 8:45, as you know. But tomorrow, Torah study is actually going to be at the home of Abby and Rabbi Feivel Strauss, which is very, it's the first time it's been at your house, yeah? So it's never happened before, be the first. And Torah study will also be followed by a minyan, which I'm gonna guess Abby's gonna be there as well, singing with you. So it should be a great study and service. Please join us. If you haven't heard, tomorrow's the first night of Hanukkah. If you haven't finished all of your Hanukkah shopping, our Judaica shop is still open. Not right this second, but during the week. But most importantly, we hope you'll join us next Shabbat for our congregational Shabbat and Hanukkah dinner that WRJ Sisterhood and MRJ Brotherhood are sponsoring for us, and you can RSVP online or by calling Temple. And now that all of that's behind us, I also want to say Abby and I were speaking before the service, and generally, I don't know if you know this, but even when Rabbi Greenstein isn't here, even when he's on sabbatical, which then he's usually coming as a parishioner, he usually watches our service. But this week, he's in Israel. So I know, well, this is how I'll find out. Because one of the last times I said something, and he came up to me after and was like, really? Because I specifically mentioned him. So we'll see if he's watching. I'm not trying to be Seinfeld, but what's the deal with angels? Thank you for whoever just giggled. You are my favorite. So what's the deal with angels? I spoke about them at the beginning of the service before Shalom Aleichem. And the Malachim, the angels that we sing about every week in this song, in this prayer, are messengers that are guiding us into the sacred time of Shabbat, right? So we have, for instance, the first verse. It can be translated as, "Peace be unto you, O ministering angels, messengers of the Most High, majesty of majesties, Holy One of blessing." And the rest of the verse in the song verses also speak about the Malachim, the angels. So why in the world are we talking about angels? What do you think of when you hear the word angel? What is the first image that comes to your mind? I hear people saying things out loud, so we might as well hear them, right? Wings. Bells. A bell? Oh, bell's ringing, that's nice. Yeah, so we have all these images in our mind, and they probably aren't very Jewish. As it turns out, as I just heard someone mention, It's a Wonderful Life. Great movie, not Jewish. So, even though we might not think about angels often in Jewish tradition, they actually are all over Jewish tradition. Obviously, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but in this week's portion, I'll explain momentarily. There is possibly an angel. This is not the portion where Jacob wrestles with the angel. We're talking about Joseph this week, but I'll explain momentarily. Do you feel that tension? Are you ready? The term malach means messenger, as I've said. It can either be a divine messenger, which we might call an angel, or simply a human messenger. And this term malach is used very often in our Tanakh. It's used over 200 times in the Torah, in the writings, and in the prophets. We also find angels in our liturgy. The Reform movement kind of shied away from it, kind of because of probably the first things that come to your mind when you talk about angels. But the Shema, that traditionally is recited at bedtime, the text for that invokes the name of 4 angels, whom the rabbis credited God for creating to represent the 4 cardinal directions. Traditionally, before going to sleep each night, a Jew repeats these words 3 times In the name of God, may Michael be at my right hand, Gavriel at my left, in front of me, Uriel, behind me, Raphael, and above my head, the Shekhinah, God's presence. And so we see that angels are traditionally invoked to protect us as we make the transition into sleep. Rabbi Rachel Kaplan-Marx teaches that when we invoke the names of the Malachim before we go to sleep at night, they are guiding our souls into what is unknown space and time for us, protecting us and thereby making our rest a sacred experience of physical renewal. So, she says, we see that the Malachim appear time and time again in our tradition to mark transitions into sacred time and space. So now how does this relate to our Torah portion? So at the very beginning of this Torah portion, this is the very beginning of the whole Joseph narrative. Joseph's father, Jacob, sends Joseph to go check on his brothers who have gone to pasture with their flock so that he can come and report back to his father about how all the other kids are doing. So when Joseph finally arrives where his father sends them, he's wandering around all the fields and he can't find them anywhere. You would think 11 brothers and some sheep would be easy to see, but he couldn't find them. And as he's wandering, he comes upon a stranger. And the stranger happened to have seen his brothers earlier and overheard their plans to head to a different city. So Joseph then heads to that city and successfully finds his brothers, though as we know that doesn't end so well for him because that is when they plot to kill him and then are like, no, we'll just sell him into slavery. Bad news for Joseph. But medieval commentator Maimonides, he takes this stranger to be an angel, to be a malach, sent to make sure that Joseph would not give up on his mission when he could not find his brothers. Although Maimonides is surely asserting this belief based on thinking it was all part of God's plan, I am more of a believer in chance. Perhaps this stranger was one of the human messengers who may appear in our lives for only a moment, but deeply impact the path we take, even if they don't know it. The Eitz Chaim Torah commentary points out that we never hear of this man again. We never re-encounter this man that helped Joseph find his brothers that day. Yet, if Joseph had not met him, he would never have found his brothers. He would never have been sold into slavery. That part sounds kind of okay. But the family would not have followed him into Egypt later when the famine struck in Canaan. There would have been no Exodus story. Had Joseph not gone to Egypt, the Jews would never have been slaves in Egypt. The history of the world and a majority of our religious tradition would be different. Could that man have known how his chance encounter changed history? Do we ever know the consequences of the little acts of thoughtfulness we perform? It is this short interaction that completely determines history. I want you to take a moment and think back to those experiences for you. It could be an experience that was with a stranger. It can be an experience with someone who is in your life. But what was a moment in which you felt changed from an interaction you had with someone? Sometimes we don't realize the impact we've had on someone, whether it's a stranger or someone we've known our whole lives. We might have a short conversation, and also certainly other people don't know the impact they've had on us. But here we are, malachim, messengers, often not aware of the message we're trying to send, but knowing that showing up is what's important. Rabbi Lawrence Kushner wrote, "And so we understand that ordinary people are messengers of the Most High. They go about their tasks in holy anonymity, often even unknown to themselves. Yet if they had not been there, if they had not said what they said or did what they did, it would not be the way it is now. We would not be the way we are now. Never forget that you, too, yourself, may be a messenger." Rabbi Greenstein, I'm not mentioning his name for a shout out, but he often talks about one of the amazing things about kindling light. One of the amazing things about the Shamash at Hanukkah, our helper candle, is that lighting the other candles doesn't detract, doesn't take away from its own light. It only adds more light. And that's the message of this week's Torah portion and of Hanukkah, that our job is to put light into the world. Putting light into the world is not something that will diminish something. It only continues to add to what good things are out there. And yes, sometimes we can get a little doubtful of what impact we can make. But what if we believe for a moment that we could make a difference? As we add more light each night of Hanukkah, we will remind ourselves that we must add more light through our random interactions, whether with a stranger or someone we know. It's possible that you could change the course of someone's life and not even know it. It's about these moments of transition. Those are moments when you encounter either divine or human messengers. And as Rabbi Kushner said, never forget that you too yourself may be a messenger. My challenge to you is now to get out there and spread your light. Shabbat shalom.